System and Soul family, welcome back. This is Benj Miller, your host, and wanted to give you a little insight to this conversation. It's a little outside the norm of what we usually do here on System and Soul, but the reason I wanted to have this conversation, I was so intrigued to speak with Judy Kane, our guest today, and in this conversation, she breaks down the limiting beliefs that are holding us back, how to find them, how to uncover them. Most of these are subconscious, and then how to move beyond them and kind of break the boundaries of these limiting beliefs. The reason I think this is so relevant to us as System and Soul is because of our leadership model that revolves around us as leaders showing up in a way that we are inwardly sound and we're not bringing any of our baggage into the situations that we lead. So how important is it for us to know what's holding us back in our subconscious and be able to make strides to be even more inwardly sound as we show up to lead in our lives and in our businesses? So a little outside the norm. I hope you're challenged by this and do some exploration of your own to figure out what some of your limiting beliefs might be.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hey friends, welcome back. We get to spend some time with my brand new friend. We're meeting for the first time, but connected over some of her content on LinkedIn and exchanged some messages. And I'm really excited to get to have this conversation. So you're just lucky you get to listen in, but we're here today with Judy Kane, and Judy Kane is a mindset change specialist. You can find her and her information. I'll tell you at the end, and we'll put it in the show notes, alignedconsciousness.com if you're interested in having a conversation with her. But let's just start, what is a mindset change specialist, and how in the world did you get to this place in your career?
Okay. Well, what I do is help people rewrite subconscious beliefs that are getting in their way. So that's the mindset change part. I don't do strategy or accountability or behaviors. So coaching isn't really what I choose unless it's a drop-down menu that doesn't give me many choices.
Sure.
But I do work with coaches because they have clients that get stuck.
Yes.
And I can help with those clients get unstuck in those coaching programs so that everybody's a lot happier. And how I got here was, most people think it's weird, but I was in IT management for decades. Had a short stint as a realtor. And then I saw this process work. And I also saw it was something that I don't need to interpret messages or sense where energy is to do this. It's a very straightforward process that I could see that I could be effective with. So I got very excited about it and started learning. But it's not that different from IT because people come to me, they've got a system that isn't working the way they want it to.
Yeah. And
we figure out what needs to change and make the changes so that they get better results.
So it seems that our mindset and our wiring, to me, maybe like IT for some, is the most complex, ununderstandable thing and feels very impossible to change because you can't just will your way into some new beliefs, or maybe you can. So
yeah.
What actually happens? Give us a little taste under the covers. What actually happens? What do we need to do to change our mindsets?
Okay. And you're absolutely right. You can't usually will yourself into a different subconscious belief. If that were true, all the people who are terrified of flying and know that it's safer to get on the plane than drive to the airport would not have that fear. Logic and data don't usually play much of a role in the subconscious beliefs. So people come to me and they aren't happy with some aspect in their life. It might be a phobia. It might be their business isn't doing as well as they'd like. It might, it can be relationships that they keep repeating that aren't the way they'd like them to be. So it can be any aspect that's impacted by the subconscious because it creates 95% of your perception of the world. right?
Yeah.
So it's a very
Yeah.
big deal for what's in the subconscious. And so they come to me and something's not the way they want it to be. And so we talk about, well, what's happening now and what would you rather be experiencing? So that's where we start. We backtrack into the differences so that we can figure out what's likely causing the barrier, the block, the discomfort, the disbelief, whatever it is that's in the way. And then they have to, this stumps a lot of people, they have to figure out what it is they really want. A lot of people only know what they don't want.
Yeah. I find that's the hardest question for leaders to answer because we're driving towards something, but we're not exactly sure what.
Right. It's more of an avoidance behavior where it's a fear of this thing, so you go do that, but you haven't really been clear about what the new stuff is that you really want. And so that's the first step. And sometimes that can be enough to just get really, really detail level clear about what it is you want to be happening.
Yeah.
That can make a big difference right there. But, well, you were going to say something.
Well, I was wondering, I don't want you to breach any confidentiality, but I wonder if you could take us through a fictitious process of somebody you've worked with. Sure. And what that actually looked like, and we might be able to like spot some similarities in our own lives.
Sure. Okay. Happy to.
You can change the names.
Yeah, I
innocent.
don't give names, but yeah, I can absolutely. So I was working with somebody who wanted their business to get better, right? It had stalled at this level, and no matter what she did, it was not getting any better. And she was frustrated because she was doing all the right things and she knew all the right stuff.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't happening. And it turns out that, we kind of explored, I don't know if you're familiar with muscle testing.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And maybe the audience isn't, but it's a way of getting the body to let you know what's going on. Some nutritionists use it for supplements that are used. Some chiropractors use it for where to manipulate. In the process I use, we use it to figure out what's in the subconscious. And so using that and having, talking about the emotions that were coming up for this coach, and kind of getting to a place where we could neutralize that with the process and then some specific statements. We found out that one of the big reasons that she wasn't getting the success she wanted was she had subconscious beliefs that to have a successful business, she needed to work all the time. And so her subconscious was protecting her from that imbalance between work and life.
Yeah.
And once she changed it so that she had a belief that she could have a successful business and control her calendar and her time and have the balance she wanted for all of her priorities, the business started doing a lot better.
That's amazing. What are some of the other common beliefs that you see kind of pop up?
Yeah, particularly with success, there's a real fear of success for a bunch of different reasons. That I have seen, and and everybody's different. Sure. I don't have cookie cutter belief statements or questions, but when you've seen enough people, there are some things that kind of form as patterns, right? So you can be afraid of being seen or heard. That can get in the way of fear of success, and that comes from childhood, either literally not being safe or emotionally. There are lots of reasons for these beliefs. But if it's uncomfortable, if you don't think your message is good, if you don't like being the center of attention, all those types of things can get in the way of being successful. Because if you're going to be successful, you need to have your own voice, and people need to see you.
Yeah.
It can be a scarcity mindset, right? Not just money, scarcity of time.
Yeah.
You know all the people that say there's never enough time to do all the stuff.
Yeah.
Well, their subconscious made them believe that. And so it fills up their time with low priority things so that their priority stuff doesn't get done.
Wow.
Yeah,
I hear that all the time, but I've never thought about, wow, they're just confessing to a scarcity mindset and a fixed mindset in that belief. That's incredible.
the money scarcity, no matter what the amount is that you think you need to be content, when you hit it, it's not enough because you don't believe there's enough.
Hey, listener, we don't spend much time talking about ourselves on this podcast because we want to really be bringing you new ideas from outside sources for inspiration, for your own leadership, for your own organization. And we don't like talking about ourselves, but we're going to let somebody else talk about us for a second and brag on us. And I hope this gives you a little insight into what System and Soul is doing in the businesses that we're getting to work with.
I'm in love with this whole new framework because anything that I do is always about soul. And I've never been able to marry process and the soul of an organization together. And this is the first time that I feel like I have the ability to do that. I've been a part of the EOS journey for many, many years. I've worked in nonprofit. Of course, when I joined Orbis, I've been through several different implementers, and the evolution of the System and Soul framework is just brilliant for me. Because it's just, we have to care about culture. We have to care about these things called values. It's more than just some plaque on a wall. It's just not some talking point that we say to employees when they first start applying. Like, it has to be, we have to live, we have to breathe, we have to show by example. And this is the first time that I've ever been able to really embrace that and then have a ground to stand on when I'm having really difficult conversations about the direction of our business. And it's been really exciting.
If you want to discover breakthrough in your business by becoming a System and Soul coach or finding one of our coaches to help your business, you can always learn more at systemandsoul.com. So what do we, obviously everybody should call you and hang out with you and do muscle testing and rewire our brain. But if we're at home and we want to take some baby steps toward, maybe even just the first step, I assume, is figuring out what some of these beliefs are there practices we can do at home?
Well, I always tell people when they ask this question, first look for the patterns. Are there things that regularly cause you stress, or that you just see, you keep trying to do the same thing and nothing changed. You don't get this, you get the same results over and over again. It's not working for you. Yeah. So look for the patterns, first of all. One instance of self-sabotage does not mean you've got a subconscious belief getting in your way. But if there's a pattern of self-sabotage, that's a pretty good clue you've got subconscious beliefs that don't want you to be achieving whatever that goal was.
So talk about self-sabotage, because I think that happens way more than anybody's aware of. Like if you said, do you self-sabotage yourself? I'd be like, no. And then you'd probably ask me 3 questions. I'm like, oh yeah, I do, totally, over and over and over. So how do we find how do we confess that, see that from the outside? Because we live it and it's hard to see ourselves.
Right. Well, if you're always late for important things, that can be a form of self-sabotage. There can be a lot of reasons for it, but definitely it's something to consider. If you don't make the big meetings, at the time that everybody thinks is appropriate, that's not a good thing in your career or if you're an entrepreneur with your clients. Sure. It's just doesn't help. Procrastination, putting things where you can't find them.
Interesting. Would not have expected that one.
Well, if you're trying to run into a meeting and can't find the stuff that you're going to use to do the presentation, that's self-sabotage. That's just, that's not just happenstance.
Interesting.
Yeah. Always putting the wrong thing down, losing phone numbers of key contacts, or putting things down in the calendar on the wrong date, or, there are all sorts of things that you tell yourself, well, you're just clumsy, or don't know how to pay attention, or you're not working hard enough. People blame themselves and call themselves bad names when all these things happen. And they need to be a little bit more understanding that a lot of times this is subconscious beliefs that are really hard to work past.
Yeah. Yeah. So I see. So one theme there is anytime you kind of find yourself blaming yourself for the same thing, that's probably an indicator. Is there also a feedback from, hey, I hear this from people a lot, and
Sure.
that there's probably an area there where
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, don't discount feedback from others. If they're all saying the same thing, that's a really good clue that something
Yeah.
isn't working right.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do we do if we find the area? How do we get from, oh, this is a thing, to what's the belief?
Yeah. That can be harder. But so taking a look at what's going on and being really objective about what the behavior is or the approach or something like that can help. If you take a look at it and you're just, if you've been telling yourself that you just don't have the capacity to keep your papers straight, start questioning yourself like you would somebody else. Is that really true? Are you really unable to put something where you can find it or, find the right date on a calendar? It's not true for most people. So then you start looking at why that might be, although with the process I use, the whys aren't that important, which means it's a really good process to use if people have a history of childhood trauma.
Okay.
Or any kind of trauma, because you don't need to go back and figure out why you have this belief, why you're reacting like this. You can just change what's causing it now.
Wow. Yeah. Save yourself a couple years in therapy to get there.
Well, yeah. And you don't have to re-traumatize yourself in the process because, if you don't know what it is, you don't need to. And if you do, you don't need to put words to it for me to know. So a lot of times when people have that history, it's re-traumatizing to have to explain it to somebody else.
Sure. Absolutely. So you don't have to know why, you just have to kind of question the thing at hand. And through that questioning process, you can start to rewire. Is it not to oversimplify, but...
Well, you can get some insight there, right? But the next thing, once you've figured out what the pattern is or what the emotion is that you're reacting with, or whatever it is, however you're trying to parse this out, then you can figure out, well, what would you rather be having happen, right? I mean, so you picture the outcome the way you want it to be. You can picture getting into the meeting 5 minutes early, if that's the culture, right? How much better it's going to look. And you can picture, get good visual details of what it's going to look like. What are people going to be saying? How are you going to feel? What's the difference in your emotions when you're not running in there half panicked because you're running late yet one more time, right?
Yeah. That's funny. Is that a common one? You keep going back to that.
It's just easier to illustrate for this conversation.
Yeah, it is. That's fair. So let's talk about your practice for a second, because it's super fascinating. Okay. And I think there's probably everybody can relate to something in this. What is the process with you? Is it, you talked about muscle testing. I assume that's in person.
No, it's virtual.
Wow, you can muscle test virtually?
Yeah.
That's amazing. We'll leave that there for another day.
Okay.
So is it typically people spend how much time with you to get one of these miraculous breakthroughs?
It depends on what it is. Everybody, I'll have, sometimes people call. I offer a free 15-minute phone call if people have questions about what I do or how it might work for whatever they want to change. And that's always one of the questions. Well, how many sessions do you think it'll take?
Yeah.
And it's like, this is what I can tell you. I've never had a phobia client take a full hour.
Really?
The process I use, you can usually change any one belief in less than 5 minutes. Phobias may be intense, but they're very simple sourced. So it's not that many beliefs creating all that panic.
Okay.
So far, I have not had a phobia client take a full hour. So we finish with the phobia, and then it's like, what else do you want to change? We got time, right?
Yeah.
So.
Wow. So what are some of the more complex ones?
Well, and the history of trauma is that usually is more complex. There's a lot of things that have to do. The things that I work with tend to group around either safety or self-esteem.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, and so it can be a combination of those things that are working against you for any type of situation. I do frequently work with coaches as a resource where they have a client that's stuck and they have worked through the likely areas that need some help, right?
Yeah.
So when a coach sends somebody to me, it's usually in an hour we can get rid of the main barriers that are keeping them from whatever's supposed to be happening in the coaching program.
Yeah. Wow. So I don't even know what to say. I'm glad that we get to introduce you to the world. I hope we fill up your calendar.
Oh, that would be lovely.
I mean, seriously, like, this is, it doesn't get much more to the root of the problem. We can talk about processes and systems and, how we coach people in business. But if they're stuck on some beliefs, like, it's hard as a manager, as a leader, to get them past that. And it may not even be appropriate in some cases to ask some of the same questions that you'd be able to ask. So I think for the people listening and for the people that they lead, you're just such a cool gift you're giving to the world. I don't even know what else to ask. I feel like everybody just needs to sign up for a session with you. But what else are you thinking about, passionate about? What else do you want us to know?
Be gentle with yourself, right? The negative self-talk is self-fulfilling, right? Oh. And it's not accurate. You're blaming yourself for something that you don't have a whole lot of control over if it's subconscious beliefs. So know that can be the reason that things aren't going the way you'd like. And also know that these things can be changed. I talk to some people who are just like, well, this is just the way I am. Well, it doesn't have to be. Yeah. So resignation to a less than happy state is not necessary.
Yeah, it's hopeless, right?
Yeah.
Be gentle and have hope. That's what I'm writing down.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, Judy, thank you for taking the time to jump on with me and introducing yourself to our community. I hope they take full advantage, and I hope I get to hear some of the stories that come out of it.
Absolutely. Thanks. I've enjoyed this.
All right. Thank you, Judy.